Good evening and welcome to our public lecture entitled Climate Change and Our Buildings, How We Can Decarbonize Them. My name is Altaf Oren, and I have a privilege to serve as a director for McMaster Center for Climate Change and hosting today's talk in collaboration with McMaster Alumni Engagement Office and McMaster Institute for Energy. Tonight's talk has drawn about 300 participants. Many are online. We are recording this talk and it will be available to you for sharing and watching later on. After Dr. Jim Cotton's talk, we will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we look forward to it. I would like to invite Dean, Faculty of Science, Dr. Maureen McDonald, to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Jim Cotton. Faculty of Science is the largest McMaster faculty with 8,000 students and 300 faculty and staff members. In addition to serving as the Dean, Maureen also has a vibrant research lab in Department of Kinesiology. She has been nationally recognized for her excellence in student mentorship. We are grateful for Maureen to be here, so please welcome.
Thank you, Altaf, and good evening, everyone. This has been a big week for McMaster. On Monday, we joined millions of people from across North America to watch the total solar eclipse. It was a truly awesome celestial event. And today is another big day for MAC. It's the final day of classes for this academic year. So a special welcome to all students who are with us tonight. If you've taken a break from studying and perhaps celebrating, if you're on campus, you'll know that it's Light Up the Night. So we're lighting it up differently here. The Faculty of Science and McMaster begin all public events with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional territories upon which we gather. McMaster University is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. This morning, I was involved in a conversation about how our Indigenous colleagues at McMaster are approaching the complex and very difficult conversation about Indigenous ancestry verification. I was particularly impressed that the committee leading this work took the time to identify the reciprocal principles they're looking to honor in their work. And they said that those principles are truth and truthfulness, kinship and good relations, living a good life and having a good mind, and kindness. I think that the world would certainly be a better place if we all looked to honor those principles. I'm not alone in believing we have much to learn from the original stewards of this land. As a Faculty of Science, we fundamentally believe that diversity will always lead to better science, stronger collaborations, and, particularly relevant for tonight, a more sustainable future. Tonight's lecture is timely on many fronts. It has been reported that 2023 was the planet's hottest year going back to 1850 when records started to be kept. Last month was 1.68 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial times. It was the hottest March on record. And the director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies just warned climate change could move into uncharted territory if we continue this path. Now for some good news. That is likely old news for all of you. Rapidly cutting emissions of planet-warming gases is our best way to stop global warming. We are doing our part in the Faculty of Science and in the Faculty of Engineering from the work being done by exceptional researchers like Altaf and many others at the McMaster Center for Climate Change. We have many new initiatives that are unfolding at McMaster University. For example, in the Faculty of Science, we are getting ready to open the doors to our new teaching and research greenhouse. And I see someone here in the audience who helped me champion that cause when I first became dean 7 years ago. It's the very first building on campus to use a sustainable geothermal system for heating and cooling. We hope our building is the first of many at McMaster. This facility will enable cutting-edge research in plant science for future climates. We know that there is much work to be done, but the collective brain power of our students, grads, faculty, and staff make a real difference. And one of those McMaster faculty members is tonight's keynote speaker. Dr. James Cotton is a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. He is also the director of the McMaster Institute for Energy Studies. His research focuses on developing energy systems and technologies to advance safe and efficient thermal management solutions, integrated energy systems, and nuclear energy harvesting technologies. James has co-founded a startup company called Harvest. His company aims to support decarbonization of the restaurant industry with their fuel-less, carbon-free hot water heating system. Their system captures waste heat from cooking applicants like ovens and fryers to offset energy consumption in other parts of the restaurant. I don't want to steal his thunder, but last year Harvest received an investment of more than $250,000 from the McMaster Seed Fund that's been followed by other investments. James earned his Bachelor and Master's of Engineering along with his PhD at McMaster, so clearly we're never letting him go. Which speaks to the caliber of Mac's students and their capacity to change the world. Prior to joining as a faculty member, James worked in industry with Danacorp. His industry research focused on automotive power plant and fuel cell thermal systems and emissions control is truly remarkable. Please join me in welcoming Dr. James Cotton.
Thank you very much. So when Altaf asked me to do this presentation about a month ago, I thought it was a good idea. And I proposed a title and he said, well, what do you think about this one? I said, oh, that sounds really cool. And then 2 days ago, when I started to make the presentation, I went, oh, this is really hard. But the good thing is I have a lot of students and I have a really great team that helped me. And I want to show you a presentation. Actually, maybe I'll come back to this before. If you look at this, this is Hamilton. That Stelco DeFasco's over here. That facility could heat all of these homes if we changed our infrastructure and we developed our infrastructure. That's what this talk is about. But Stacy, who just recently graduated and got a really good job doing exactly what she's doing here, does it better than I do.
Buildings contribute to a significant amount of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. This comes from the energy used to power appliances and lights, cool buildings in the summer, and heat them in the winter. Some buildings with high cooling loads will reject heat to the surroundings throughout the entire year. What if this rejected heat could instead be shared with a building that needs it, reducing the total amount of fuel consumed? This can be accomplished using a thermal energy network. In order to design these networks, we have to know how much energy is required and rejected by each building. This is the focus of my research. My name is Stacy and my work uses measured utility data to train a predictive building energy model. I look at how different factors like weather impact energy demand and use them to predict the thermal and baseload profiles for each building. This helps to control the system to distribute energy efficiently while minimizing carbon emissions.
So I don't know how I have to do anything after this. Stacy basically defined the problem. We have carbon in our buildings. She won the GradFlix Award for this contribution, and she didn't even explain what she was talking about whatsoever. She didn't use the big word. If you look at where our energy comes from for our buildings, okay, we have our appliances, we have our lights, we have our space cooling, and then we have all this orange stuff. That's how we heat our homes and our hot water. And then if we come back, okay, this is about greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions savings. Where does the carbon come from? How we heat our homes. And about 6% in this province comes from our electrical grid. Thanks to our very green electrical grid, nuclear, hydroelectric, and a lot of wind. So what should we focus our efforts on? Heating, right? So where does our heat come from? How do we heat our homes? Well, most of our homes are heated by natural gas. Most of you, probably almost all of you, have a natural gas furnace. Maybe some of you have a heat pump, right? We have about, what, 3%? It's growing. And if you're in a northern community, you're probably on fuel, diesel fuel, propane, or even wood. Commercial, it's almost all, 90% is gas. So we have to tackle this problem. This is a huge problem. Why is it a huge problem? Well, guess what? We live in a cold climate. This is Toronto. Here's Edmonton. It's a little bit colder. We're on par with Sweden. So this is indicative of how much energy we need to heat our building. This is indicative of how much energy we need to cool our building right here. The difference is tenfold. We have a problem, and it's tenfold what our cooling problem is. And if you know anything about our electricity grid, our peak right now is because of cooling. Could you imagine tenfold on top of that to do the heating side? And it's worse than that, because when we're cooling, we're only trying to take heat out of our building between a 12-degree temperature difference. Say it's 35 degrees Celsius outside, you warm up your house, or you cool down your house to 23, you increase your set point a little bit because you're a good citizen. But in the wintertime, when it's between minus 30 and minus 40, you still want 20, you set it back a little bit. Now the temperature difference is 60. That's 5 times. So that peak energy demand is 5 times higher. So it's a significant challenge. So I'm going to talk about stuff. I presented this actually to my sustainable energy course yesterday and to my thermodynamics 101 course. And I asked for their feedback. It was the last class, and I thought, okay, well, let's have some fun. And they said, well, you better explain what a joule is, because when I came in here, I didn't know what a joule was. So a joule is a measure of energy. So is a kilowatt hour, and watts are power. They're different. All right. So and then you get into prefixes. So kilowatt hours is what you see on your electricity bill, right? You're probably between 500 and 1,000. Well, a pizza oven uses about 300 a day, just to give you context, enough to heat 6 homes. McMaster uses 10 megawatts of power at peak, typically. The scale of a nuclear, or scale of our entire electricity grid at peak on, say, September 1st last year was 23 gigawatts, okay, 10 to the 9. We get into terawatts when we're talking about how we heat this city. And this city is a little bit bigger. It's probably more than 1 terawatt. It's probably 4 or 5 terawatts. And then we're getting into these 10 to the 15, so pentajoules when we talk about the province. So I'm going to use all these words, okay? And then I'll use thermal energy and electrical energy because they're a little bit different. So give you context. This is our electrical grid. I'll talk about that more. This is our average right here, energy demand. In September 1st, that's our peak energy demand. This is our average heating demand if I heated every day of the year, which I don't. Okay, I only heat in the summertime. That is my peak. I can't reach because I'm too short. Heating demand. That's what we have to deal with. So how do we deal with that? Well, our electrical grid's very clean. We should electrify that, right? We can do that by baseboard heaters like they do in Quebec. If you've ever been to Quebec, very uncomfortable. Let's not do that. That's bad. We'll use heat pumps, okay? What is a heat pump? A heat pump is an electrical device, exactly the same as your refrigerator, that takes heat from a cold space and puts it into a warm space. So it takes it from outside, warms your house. It takes it from the ground, warms your house. And you can even take it from things like sewers or wastewater or heat and heat your house. The efficiency is what's really good about it. So if you look at an air source heat pump, it's about 200% efficient. That's not the right word, but I'm going to use it for now. All right, 200% efficient on average, seasonal average. So that means that I need half a kilowatt of electricity, and I get half a kilowatt from the air, and it delivers 1 kilowatt of thermal energy to my house. Great. If I used the ground, it would be higher. And if I used heat recovery heat pumps, it would be even higher. We're talking 800%. So we have this technology at our disposal that we can use to electrify it. Now, that says we have to look at where our electricity comes from, okay? So here is our nuclear fleet. We have CANDO. 50% of our electricity comes from our nuclear fleet, and we are doubling that right now. That is already planned, okay? Hydroelectric. Sir Adam Beck, thank you very much. The green stuff is wind, which we have about 5 gigawatts. That's a lot. There's a lot of wind energy. And then the remainder, that blue stuff, oh, there is some sun, but I'll talk about sun in a second. There is some sun, not very much. Most of it is at the distribution level. So there is about 2 gigawatts of sun. But this energy here is called the marginal energy. That's our gas. So when we don't have enough, we use gas. Okay. Now, here's something interesting. I like this because I picked this up on the 9th, obviously, the day after the eclipse. I was out there on top of Hatch watching the eclipse. It was fantastic. And I got that picture right there myself. So I'm very proud of that. And then I went, okay, what happened to the electrical grid? Because I'm such a nerd. And that's what happened. See right there? That's the eclipse. Okay. So we have all of this solar energy that's behind the meter that people have on their homes that sort of offsets their demand, and it all went away. And so our electricity demand increased by 500 megawatts during that 2-hour period approximately. 500 megawatts. That's enough energy to heat 50 or to power 50 McMaster universities. Guess how we dealt with it? Gas. That's our battery. So if we look at that, gas is on the margin. Gas helps us deal with things like eclipses. It doesn't happen very often, but there's other things that happen, right? Wind stops blowing. The problem is right now that we are at a time where we are refurbishing our nuclear fleet. So our nuclear fleet is a little bit lower than it is, and we're refurbishing more. So what's happening now is more and more gas is going on grid. And right now, most of the time, 60% of the time, gas is on grid. And I showed you, it's even higher. So I think their predictions are off. It was almost only 5 hours of a week that gas was not on grid. So if you think about where does your next joule come from? Well, guess what? It comes from gas. Your next joule comes from gas. That's a problem. And it's only getting worse. And this is from the ISO. It's because it takes a long time to build a nuclear power plant. That's our main strategy right now to decarbonize. It's because we have to fix a lot of nuclear power plants or refurbish them. It's not really fixing, they're extending their life. And in the meantime, our government has decided to rely on our gas fleet. So what does that mean? Well, right now, most of our homes, 74.5% are heated by natural gas. I'll be nice and say they're 90% efficient. That means for my 1 kilowatt hour of heat, I need 1.1 kilowatt hours of natural gas, and I generate that carbon 204 grams. Now, I decide tomorrow I'm going to switch to an air source heat pump. Okay? And when I switch to my air source heat pump, I have a 200% efficiency, but because I'm switching now in this environment, I have a challenge. I'm getting it from a gas plant, right? Because I said the next joule is from a gas plant. And my gas plants are 42% efficient. I'm not going to get into it. That's thermal 101. That means 42% goes to electricity and 58% goes up the chimney. I like that number because I'm going to try to capture it later on, but only 42%. Then we're a big country and a lot of it is all over the place and no one wants a nuclear power or gas power plant near them, so it's far ways away. So we have a lot of line losses, but 10% if you include distribution. So in order to heat my building, get that 1 kilowatt hour of heat, I need half a kilowatt of electricity. With all of these losses, I need 1.3 kilowatts of gas. My carbon emissions went up 17%. Okay, the good thing is I'm using this as an example. We need 240% efficient heat pumps, so buy the good one. 300%, that balances us. 300% brings us to the other side. So we really have to figure out and make sure if we're selling heat pumps, we're selling the good ones. That's not really the problem. We still have to electrify. We have to electrify. Okay. The problem is really if everybody does it, this is what happens. So this is the whole year. This is 2 years of that ISO data that I showed you, the nuclear and everything. This is that all summed up. Okay. And right now we see the peaks, they happen in the summertime. My colleagues at Boltzmann, we've done similar modeling, but I like to use their stuff because I like the figure. This is if everybody switched to air source heat pumps, everybody in the entire country. So we go from a peak of 2,300 to a peak of 75 or 23 to 75 gigawatts. That's the challenge. How do we deal with that challenge? Come on in, guys. No, come on in. That's okay. They're all my guys. So we have a challenge. Obviously, we're not going to all electrify, and we've used some assumptions and things like that. But this does correspond to also the gas data. So this is a challenge, okay? Because right now our plans are only to increase it to about 50 to 60 gigawatts. And even if we did, look at our asset utilization. It's really like the density shows the asset utilization would be terrible asset utilization. That doesn't include electrification of cars. That doesn't include electrification of our industry. So we have a problem. So let's go a little bit narrower. I've been involved with Lynn for, I don't know, a long time. And this was work done before the other project. And we did this, and I still love this presentation because this is Burlington. This is my hometown. I'm on the community energy plan, now climate action plan. And we had this fortune to visit Sweden. And we saw how they were doing it. And then it was a sustainable cities. And we came back and I got some people ask me, can you see what happened if we followed Sweden's and what happened and we electrified everything? So we said, okay, yeah, sure. So all my students spent 3 weeks. They dropped everything, all their research, everything, and said, okay, let's do it. And they worked on this for 3 weeks. And we got the data for electricity, transportation fuel, and natural gas. And what we found is those 26% is electricity, 29% is transportation, and 44% is of the energy is from natural gas to heat our homes. Okay, that's interesting. The carbon was more interesting. 50% of carbon comes from heating our homes. So what should we be tackling, right? What really should we focus our research efforts on? Now, of course, you know, our efforts at McMaster on electrification of vehicle, Dr. Ali Ahmadi and Dr. Habibi and the entire team over there, that's brilliant. It has to happen. They're 10 years ahead of where we need to be on the heating systems. So it's a big challenge. But now, if we look at what happens if we do electrify things, and we're just looking at totals, pentajoules are like how much we use in a whole year, right? And this is just changing it tomorrow. So magic wand, okay, tomorrow it's all electricity. Electric vehicles are way more efficient. So it goes from, sorry, I gotta go back a couple, 7 to 2, 2.6. And air source heat pumps go down from 10 to 4.2. That's great. So we've made a bunch of efficiency improvements. That does increase our electricity delivery by Burlington Hydro by 2-fold. Okay, now I'm not really doing this instantaneously. We'd do this over a 50-year period or 25-year period. No, 25, we have to do it 25, sorry. 25-year period, right? So in 25 years, the population is going to grow by 50%. So that's a 3-fold increase in electricity that we're going to deliver. And that's for everybody. Okay, so it took us, what, 150 years to get to here with our nuclear, with our hydroelectric, with our wind, with our gas. Now we have to go 3 times that. So we need really 3 times more nuclear power plants, 3 times more Niagara Falls, which are hard to find, 3 times more wind, 3 times more solar. This is a big problem. This is a grand challenge. Okay, and of course you got to look at things, everything, right? And I'm not going to get into conservation, but we did look at conservation. This is someone else's. It just looks cooler than ours. But if you look at it, you start with the cheapest and you go forward. And these are called deep retrofits, right? Insulation, changing the best appliances, making sure there's no leaks, or sort of summarize everything and get rid of old crappy appliances and heating systems. Okay, we need to do that over 25 years. That'll happen. We should be doing a little bit more than that, but this is what we need to do. So when we looked at this and we looked at the best in class transition from where we are today to where we could be based on all the technology that we could dig up in all of our research of best in art conservation, this is what happened. It went up. That population thing is a problem. So it went up only 9%, and greenhouse gas emissions only went. So we have to do something other than conserve. We have to start thinking about fuel switching, right? We have to get off gas, get off our electric, or we go to electric vehicles. We have to figure out how to do that. Okay, so there's this opportunity when you understand the grid and the system at large. And the system at large says, here is how much energy we need in Ontario. Okay, so this is 100%. Okay, 100%, this is the uranium, raw energy, crude oil, raw energy, natural gas, mostly for heating our homes. We have some coal, it's still mostly used in industry, hydroelectric, and some of these are outdated. This should be fatter. Wind and solar have grown significantly. However, of that raw energy, only 40% is useful. All the rest of it is dumped. Like the original picture I showed you, ArcelorMittal Dofasco Stoco. We don't use it. So this lost energy is an opportunity if we figure out how to repurpose that. We have it. We have it in our communities. Right now, it has no value. What if we monetize that value? And then say if you had an arena, like Stacy talked about, they got a revenue stream for heating the pool next door, right? That's what has to happen. So if we look at this, if we take climate action, we really think about what we need to do. Obviously, if you include industry, everything, our mining sector, it's only 24%, but 24% is a lot of our carbon emissions. We dump 60%, just said that, and we put so much renewables online, and we don't have storage, proper storage, that we actually curtail. Curtail means that we spill more water over Niagara Falls. We stop the turbine blades from spinning. We unplug the solar panels, and we actually even bypass heat around our nuclear fleet and dump that heat directly into our lakes. That's 6 to 9% of all of the energy we use is not harnessed. Okay, and then as we electrify, we're looking at 2 to 5 times, and it depends on how we do it, right? We're planning for 2. In reality, it's going to be more. So how do we deal with this? What's the solution? Well, thermal networks. I'm going to get into this. Okay, that was the title of my presentation before we changed it. So now I know what I'm talking about. Then harvesting and sharing energy. No one shares. But we live in a shared economy, right? If you use Uber or Airbnb. So the word is nice. You still make money. And then we need distributed energy resources. We need resources in our community. We need combined heat and power systems in our community. We need solar collectors, more solar collectors, like way more solar collectors in our communities. We need to create demands. Guess what I can do with a heat pump? Create a demand. And we need to integrate our networks. That diagram, that spaghetti, it's called a Sankey diagram, that they're all independent streams. You go to the gas station, you buy gas. You pay Enbridge gas for your natural gas to heat your home, and you get electricity from your utility, right? What if we had an integrated supplier of energy that optimized all 3? That's the future. So how much do we have? So we published this last year, I think, and we left one important thing out. So I'm going to add it. So industry dumps about at 64. Okay, just give you numbers. 64, it doesn't matter. 30, 10 is dumped on gas power plants. That's doubling, sadly. Okay, curtailed energy is about 9. And actually even cooling process. This isn't usually counted, and there's a lot more than this. This is what we were able to account for with publicly available data. That's grocery stores. That's your data center. That is your arena. That's your cold storage. That adds up to 130. That's what you just have to get rough idea of numbers, okay? 130. To heat all their homes, it's 191. Not bad. You're not going to recover all of it, but you're going to recover a lot of it. Now, what did I leave out? Started working with Dave Novak. I started working with Bob Walker and CNA, and we look at there's a lot of heat. There's more opportunity in heat if we go to very small modular reactors, or if we take the heat from our own reactor at McMaster University, which most people don't even remember we have. 5 megawatts, 5 megawatts. Okay, or if we tap into the new reactors, if they become combined heat and power nuclear reactors like they have in other places in the world. We're not talking about something that's not been done. We're talking about the opportunity. So here's something I like talking about. I've been doing this a lot. This is my pizza restaurant. All right. So just to bring it home and bring it local again. So a pizza restaurant has probably the highest energy. So it uses the most energy per square foot of everybody in our community. Just to give you an idea, like it uses a lot. All right. It uses so much, it could heat 6 homes just by the energy it's dumping up the chimney. Then it brings in other utilities to heat its hot water, to do its dishwashing, to heat the air because it's sucking up so much air. It's like your own house, right? You have your vent hood and it sucks up air, and sometimes it's hard to open the door. If you go to a pizza restaurant, sometimes it's hard to open the door. They have to pump air back in and warm it up because they're sucking so much out, right? So what if we could harvest that heat right off the appliance, integrate a thermal storage device, and heat their hot water? That would work. Guess what? We did it. We got $1.5 million, $1.7 million now in research funding to develop this technology, patented it. Jeff over here changed the regulatory standards to allow us to do that. It's going to be changed this month, Jeff. Pretty good timing. And we're able to recover heat and then heat hot water. But what we're doing with a pizza restaurant or McDonald's is even worse, is all we're doing is really heating their hot water for dishes and their dishwashing system. Wings Up, we're working at their makeup air system, right? But for a fast food restaurant, they have so much heat. I said 6 homes, we're only using 1 to 2 of them. So what if I could export that heat? What if I could sell that to a thermal network? Guess what? You could make money. Just using it internally, okay? Using that energy on site instead of a conventional gas or electric, they'll save net $30,000. ROI is 18%. That's really good. 3-year payback period, pretty good. They want a little bit lower. I'm working on it. But a full service restaurant is better because they use a lot more water. Now imagine if we could use all of those. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional revenue, depending on the type of restaurants. So guess what? All that heat I was talking about has value. And you can commoditize it. You can monetize it. And you can make money on it too, because it's a $5 billion industry. That industry is just the restaurant industry. If you sold appliances that can recover heat from all the restaurants in North America, that's the scale of the industry. So it's huge. So other people can make a lot of money. So if you have your restaurant, what do you do with it? Well, you need a network. We call it a thermal network. It's just like your electrical network. It's analogous exactly. But what we do, we have pipes in the ground and they pipe warm water around. So the arena is dumping heat, so I could put it in here too. The pool needs it. Oh, we'll sell it. We'll have microfinancial transactions, peer-to-peer transactions. Anybody used Uber or blockchain? That's what you do. It's peer-to-peer, right? But you need a management system. So somewhere in your community, you're going to need a few management systems, and this is the scale of it. Maybe it has a combined heat and power system. It has thermal storage in it. Maybe it has long-term seasonal storage in it. It has some renewables, PVs, and integrate that with bidirectional vehicles. Guess what? We built it. We built it at Hatch. It's a $5.5 million research facility. Everything I just said is built into that, including a 7-story deep thermal storage system. So it goes down 7 stories. There's 66 boreholes underneath of this half of this building. We heat that up to 60 degrees Celsius, and that from waste heat from an engine. It's a very small engine. It's a Toyota Corolla engine, literally. But I'm capturing the waste heat, and I'm using that waste heat not only to power that building during peak times, only during peak times, offsetting gas on grid, never when there's no gas on grid. So I go from 42%, remember that number a little while ago, 42%, to 80 to 90% efficient. I halved carbon emissions. Okay, someone's gonna get mad at me because I put gas at McMaster University, right? I'm gonna get in trouble. And there's more gas coming from McMaster University. But the atmosphere does not care if it came from McMaster University or if it came from Halton Hills Power Plant. I have the carbon emissions into the atmosphere. That's what we have to start focusing on, is the system level understanding of carbon emissions reductions. We found over 1,000 sites that we could put these type of systems in. So, and really there's 3 sizes because I came from the automotive industry. What size do you want? 0.5 megawatt, 1 megawatt, or 2 megawatts? What color of car would you like? Black, black, or black? Model T Ford. That's exactly it. Okay. And we had a good reduction in carbon emissions. So just harvesting alone, almost halved it, adding a CHP and running that locally, as opposed to getting that energy from offsite, goes down with storage to 600 and all the way down to 0. When we switch that out with a bio CHP or maybe an MMR in the future, or a micro modular reactor, or very small reactor, right? We have that opportunity. It could be hydrogen. And when you do that across the entire province, remember that 75, that's gone. It's down to here because we're using the resources in our community, right? We need new infrastructure to do that. So what does that look like? It's called a thermal network. So you have pipes in the ground. You have your prosumers, your arenas, your grocery stores, you have your energy management center, and you integrate that with thermal storage. Okay, so all it is buried pipes. We already have sewage systems. We have water delivered to our house. Why can't we have hot water? Right? So it exists. It's not new. In fact, there's a nuclear power plant heating homes as far as 100 kilometers away with waste heat. And it's been in operation for 40 years. We're just not doing it. We have Enwave, who does heating and cooling. And now they have the well, this big thermal storage tank in their community. So it's not like it's not been done. It's possible. We're just not doing it because we have cheap gas. Okay, so what is it? It's pipes in the ground. They look like sewage pipes. They can be insulated. They don't have to be. They can be flexible and bendable. We've got directional drilling thanks to shale gas, right? So we have these networks. We can build these networks. We expand on these networks. What else does it involve? Well, at your home, instead of having a big furnace with gas, you know, that gas that burns, that leaks, you need a carbon monoxide tester, you have a heat exchanger. So it's probably a water-to-water heat exchanger, and that's about this high. I'm short, so it's about that high. All right, or you have a heat exchanger and a heat pump. Now, this is a waste energy recovery heat pump, so I get the 800% benefit, not the 200% benefit. And then I need storage, and there's a bunch of storage. This is something we're just getting into right now. It's really fascinating. So obviously, there's the tank storage. We have that. I talked about the geostorage. I'll get into that a little bit more. But we can also use pit. So imagine an old quarry that is not used anymore. Or imagine an aquifer, which we actually have a lot of. A saline aquifer trapped down deep in the earth. We can heat that up. They do that in Europe all the time. So look at the well. This is this new construction in the heart of Toronto, right? We have Markham District Energy. Guelph has one too, where they store big tanks of water. That's all it is, just like your hot water heater, all integrated. So we have the tank storage. We have what we just found, my friend Bill Wong, who is retired from NRC. I just found this paper. He did a study on all of the saline aquifers, the green things, that we could store heat in. Guess where this is? Toronto. Guess where our nuclear fleet is? Pretty ideal. Oh, and those are the pit storages locations that we've identified. So now we're trying to figure out where should we put these? How many do we need? How much can we store? Because there's waste heat all summer long. And then there's the ground source. This is Chantel's work. So you might have heard Okotoks before. We sort of used them. They were about 50% efficient, meaning they lost some heat to the surroundings. Chantel's improved that to 70% efficient. Round trip efficiency, that's underneath of this building. So she's validated computational models, which this is a model heating up and cooling down over the seasons. We heat it up all summer long. When there's lots of waste heat, no one needs it. It cools down when you take it out of the ground and heat the building. And then we have to figure out where all of these resources are happening. And we just got a grant, thanks to NSERC, to do this. So we got 2 grants. One is to map out all of these resources, just like you have a wind map, right? Or you have a resource map for oil and gas industry, or you have a resource map for solar energy. We don't have a map for heat in our community that we could use that. So we're gonna do the demand, figure that out. We're gonna figure out the roofs, how much we can get, figure out from geothermal, and then what are the other supermarkets, power plants, things like that. Even if we did waste incineration. Then we're gonna do these little things, load profiles. And we're going to use what Stacy didn't talk about, machine learning, deep learning, and AI to predict what's going to happen in the future as our population grows and as we improve our efficiencies and transition over to do that. So, and then there's the nuclear. Why wouldn't you include nuclear? It's just this huge opportunity where you can either have a thermal corridor, pipe it 100 kilometers from a plant somewhere that's a little bit further away, to say a place like Toronto that has an N-wave system. Why wouldn't you do that? We've done it before. What if we had an MMR right in our own campus? A very small reactor on our own campus. Well, we do, by the way. 5 megawatts. We just can't use it because our system doesn't cooperate. It's too hot. We've already done it. So this is the pipeline infrastructure for natural gas. These are all the sources. You know those little things I talked about? They come all the way across the country in a big pipe, and then they're distributed to 74% of the homes. And that started in the 50s, and we did most of it by the 80s, 30 years. Guess what? We need 30 years to do that again, but with water. It should be easier. So what are the key recommendations? First, we really need to launch a public education and consultation plan around this concept of this new infrastructure. Step number 1 is today. Actually, we've done this a couple times at the Canadian Nuclear Association as well with our team. We have to understand that residual heat, waste heat, we used to call, is a valuable commodity. It's worth money, and it's worth money most of the time. So then if we have that and we need infrastructure, we need to do this next generation of infrastructure for social good. You want to stop climate change, you have to invest in infrastructure. You don't try to incentivize the individual who can't afford it to do it. You provide them with infrastructure to make it cheaper and affordable for them to do it. Okay, we need a utility approach. It has to be a regulated utility. It has to be integrated governance between gas, electric, and thermal. I'm not saying gas is going to completely go away. We have an infrastructure. What if that was hydrogen? What if it was RNG? What if it was different types of e-fuels? We could integrate that into our existing infrastructure and help us with some of those peaks. And then finally, the opportunity for nuclear is too good to not think about, to not plan for. We need to develop the business cases for them. We have to work out the details, and that's why we need the regulated approach to solving this problem. So key takeaways, we need to conserve. Our buildings have to change. We need low temperature heated buildings, just like the Hatch building and the geoexchange system, the greenhouse. We need to modernize and expand thermal networks. That has to grow. And then we have to start incorporating residual heat into these networks. We can even do it now. We can do it, we're talking about doing it for malls. How many restaurants are in a mall? Why don't we heat the whole mall? Guess what? That's a thermal network. And then finally, this has already existed. It's a practical solution for Canada. And if you want to look at our position paper, that's our QR code that we just launched last month on this topic. This is a cartoon I found from someone else I thought is brilliant, but basically it has everything I talked about all in one slide. So are there any questions?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Carton. So Jim, I'll say, uh, very fascinating talk on the solutions. So this is a perfect example. So in our seminar series, we have tried to bring science. This is the problem that this way, but this is a perfect example where we integrate the engineering and the science solution. So this is the factor. Like look at the margins. So great, inspiring talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open to the questions. Feel free to ask any questions.
Yes, sir.
What is a low temperature?
So it would
repeat-
be like
repeat-
geothermal in your house.
Jim,
So,
just repeat the question.
oh,
So
okay,
it's
sorry.
recorded.
What is a low temperature design for a building? Was the question, right? It is exactly what you would do if you were to use an air source heat pump or a geothermal storage system. The best would be in floor heating because that's the lowest. So if you have pipes on your ground, but it could be radiators. If you've been to Europe, you'll see little radiators on the wall. They're not baseboards like we see in Quebec. They're hot water, and it could be very low. Like when I say low, it could be like the Hatch building is heated with 35 to 40 degrees Celsius water. We only need 20. What do we need to burn 1700 for? Right, gas. Yeah.
So Jim, I originally sold my house and bought a condo, so I replaced my gas furnace with an air source heat pump. So I was feeling really good about that until tonight saw
Is it just an air source or is it a hybrid system?
it's an air source heat pump. Yeah, it's a straightforward air source heat pump.
Yep.
The systems are at least 20-year-old technology. So but one of the challenges in large buildings like that, in residential buildings, is the move towards everybody wants EVs coming down the pipeline. They don't have the infrastructure. They put in some new transformers, but that only will allow them to provide EVs for one tenth of the current population of the building. Seems to me like we need a local solution that doesn't involve having to upgrade the transformer capacity, upgrade the amount of electricity you bring into the grid. So how can you adapt this kind of approach to something like that? And I'm in a building with 60 units in it, but downtown Toronto, there are condos with way bigger numbers of units than that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll try to rephrase your question a little bit for the audience online.
Yeah.
First off, a lot of people are buying air source heat pumps, and we need them. We have to electrify, right? And the systems are improving all the time. The hybrid ones are good because you can fuel switch. So when it gets too cold, you can go back to your 90% boiler. So that's a good option. With just air source heat pumps, I think that we have to be cautious. And if there's any way you can integrate thermal storage in the future, you can start to do offsets, right? That's an easy thing. It's thermal storage, and that's really something we're developing. So I think over time, you're going to see really cool integration of ground source. So just for peaks, some little bit of thermal storage and air source, but that hasn't been there yet. Now, on the other side, electricity is going to be a huge problem. If you look at, you add an air source and you add an electric vehicle, okay, and then 10 of you do it on your street or in your condo.
60 in one building.
Yeah. So they do that in phases. They'll increase the infrastructure. Guess what? 10 years down the road, the other half will do it. They'll have to increase the infrastructure again. It has to be more planned. And we do need local distributed energy resources. So that's why I think we need more gas in our communities, frankly. We need more gas. And we need to get rid of those old gas. We need to transition away from the old ones to more local ones. Because if you had gas in your community and some of your neighbors could use the heat to heat their buildings, you're at 90% efficient. You integrate that with storage. That storage could help you with your peaks instead of using your air source. So we need more local distributed energy resources. That is critical. And the ISO is setting itself up, the independent electricity system operator is setting itself up for that. But I think we need a strategic plan because people are afraid, oh, you're adding gas, it's bad. Site emissions are going up. Oh, no. And our carbon accounting is garbage. Like, sorry, but Allison, I don't know what you were saying you're doing, but how we can do carbon accounting, it's wrong because we're not accounting for marginal emissions, right? We have to think about how we what matters is how much goes into our atmosphere. So if we have more local and we get rid of some really crappy things that are far away, that's good for the next 10 years because those carbon emissions didn't go into our atmosphere. So I hope I sort of answered your question. That was a hard question.
Um, so thanks, Jim, for the presentation. And I think about this a lot, as you know. It's sort of a two-part question. How do we change behavior and get people to come along and understand the whole energy sharing? And you talked about community engagement, but I'm thinking of like the developers and the work that's happening in Burlington around the major transit station areas, and we like there's lots of opportunity. So the second part of the question is, what sort of entity do we need to make this happen? Like, who do you think should be leading? Is it one of the utilities, or is it senior levels of government? Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I'll start backwards.
Sure.
Okay. We need something like an OEB that focuses on energy, not electricity. And that number one. And thermal networks have to be a part of that, and they have to be started to think of it as an integrated approach. And it has to be a regulated entity. It's really hard, and I know from Burlington, and I know from the consultants that you had, and how much money municipalities cannot do it. They don't have the money. We don't have the tax base that they have in Sweden. In Sweden, they get 30% of the income tax. Here, you get municipal property taxes. It's nothing. You could barely keep your own support services alive. So in Sweden, they get money for infrastructure to build out infrastructure for social good. And that's how they have that. We need to start thinking like that. We need to start saying, okay, we need a regulated entity. Guess what? Gas was a regulated entity run by a private company. That private company delivers heat to your house. What a good idea. If they took that over, and instead of not just gas, they transitioned their system over to hot water and then allowed people to participate as prosumers or consumers. And then over time, I can tell you that most of the time, waste heat is cheaper than gas, even at today's prices. We just don't have the infrastructure. But once we have that regulated entity, once we have a plan in place, then we can amortize those assets over the next 100 years, like we did our electrical grid, like we do our gas network. That is what I think. Now, when it comes to engagement, I don't think you're going to get building developers on board to do this until you have that regulated entity, because they don't have the certainty that this is going to happen. So certainty is required. We need governments to think about infrastructure. Carbon tax just piss people off. What governments need to do is build social infrastructure for social good. And that's what they should focus their efforts on. And you can amortize it. You can get a private company to run it. They could do private-public partnerships somehow to make it work. They're refurbishing our nuclear fleet on time, on budget, because of the way they're doing it. We could do that with other infrastructure. Hi, John.
Thanks very much for the talk. Very, very thought-provoking, and I completely take your point about creating these kind of utilities to distribute waste heat. But does the business case for those utilities, you kind of touched on your last answer, does that depend on compelling the consumers to join the grid in a short time?
So, yeah. So do we need to compel customers to connect is really the question, right? And the answer is, I don't think that's going to work, although it does motivate. So for Markham District Energy, it was connect or find an alternative that's better in terms of carbon emissions, I think is how they did it. I'm probably saying that sort of wrong. But did anybody here have an oil tank in their house? Okay. Did anybody force you to get rid of it? Insurance? Oh, that's a good one. Insurance got forced you? I didn't. We just got rid of it. Guess why? It was cheaper. You know what? The gas infrastructure came to the house and I went, do you want gas? Yeah, it's cheaper. Yeah, it's more resilient. Yeah, there's less pollution, leaks. Do you know, if you sort of look back, and people hate gas. I know they hate gas, but we transitioned from gas or to gas from oil, coal, wood, and electrical resistive heaters from a coal-fired power plant somewhere that was probably less than 42% efficient to gas because it was resilient, cheap, and guess what? It was just half the amount of carbon compared to the way we used to heat our homes. We didn't think about that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, but we did it. So this is just a bit about, this is all about transition. And I think, we have to make it cheaper. And that's what regulated entities does.
That's that you need the gas companies to do the distribution.
For sure. Yes. Yes. And for the full disclosure, I work with Enbridge and we talk all the time about what neighborhood we should be trying to do or what facility we should try to do and how do we build this system and how do we make money on it. They have to make money, right? Like that's, but you can make money. Is there another question? Hi.
Hi, thanks for that. I feel like I'm sort of data questions. But in terms of the, I get with the restaurant, it's a bit smaller scale, but with Hatch, did they take ownership of that or was it the third party? I don't know if you can speak to that.
Oh, the building?
Yes.
Oh, no, it's ours.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, no. So that Hatch, it's called Hatch because
I thought
they,
it was Hatch.
no, sorry. Hatch donated a whole bunch of money to build the building. So it's called Hatch. The money to build.
Open for donations for the greenhouse.
We're open for donations for the greenhouse and any other major sustainability projects.
It was Jerry, not the company.
It was Jerry, yeah. It was, he still got Hatch though. But if Jerry and so did Kurt, right? He invested it as well, and another CEO. It was but you know who did the most? Students for that building. They contributed pretty much as much, if not more. They put a levy on themselves to pay for a good chunk of that building. That building is for student experience for engineers. Fantastic building. But as we were building it, David and I had some aspirations to make it net zero. That changed over time to make it a community energy system that would be a replica of what you would put in a community. And we got funding from NSERC, OCI, ORF to build this system. So if anybody's ever interested in it, I do tours all the time. I am a tour guide. But we have the system. Yes, sir. It's right, the John Hodgkins Engineering Building at McMaster. It's the new addition to that. Yeah, so it's built into that.
So the one short question more.
Yes, sir.
Very insightful. I do not think about the energy needs for cooling in parallel, which are kind of expected to triple as well across the province concerning by 2020, and I think in each household due to global warming increase in cooling degree days. And my question is more from a public policy perspective. Is that if a policymaker has the choice or has to make a decision on scaling up the thermal network system for heating and let's say the deep lake cooling system for cooling as solutions to decarbonize emissions from buildings. My question is, are there any components in either system that could be combined or used to optimize the scaling up of such systems?
Okay, so let me try to rephrase the question. So the question was about cooling. And as our population grows and as the temperature goes up, our average cooling is going to get up, right? And you mentioned Enwave and their deep lake cooling, which is brilliant, by the way. I absolutely love that system. And we should be doing it at every city along the lake because it provides almost no pollution because all it does is you need it for your drinking water. They take your drinking water, they take the heat out of it, they deliver you a little bit warmer drinking water, and then cool all the buildings around. Brilliant, right? We should do that, absolutely, in intensified enough communities. But the average temperature is going up, not the peak temperatures. Like you might see a few peak temperatures, but as we increase our electrical grid, that slide showed you, we're going to be electrifying everything, right? We're going to be electrifying it. It just depends on what we're going to source of our cold is going to be. Is it going to be waste heat, air, or ground, right? We're going to have enough energy in the wintertime or in the summertime once we do that because our peaks in the wintertime are going to be so much higher. I'm not near as worried about cooling. By the way, I did a bunch of stuff on cooling and I went, no, this isn't a real problem. If I want to solve climate change, that's not it. I can use our infrastructure because we have to build our infrastructure for heating. Now, is there synergies between the two? If you're laying pipes and you're in dense enough communities and you have free cooling like that, you put them both in because most of the cost comes in digging the trenching and the labor and the disruption and the roads rebuilding. So put them both in. But I wouldn't recommend to most cities to do it. Like I've told Lynn that wouldn't put a cooling system in. So
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
So, so this brings to closure to our talk today. So I would like to thank our partners, McMaster Alumni Association and McMaster Institute for Energy. And then our special thanks goes to Karen McQuaig, the Director of Alumni Engagement, and the dedicated team we have that has made it possible. A special thanks goes to Dave Dawson, Shelley at the back, Morgan Telly Wu, J. Rob, and also very special thanks to the students at the back. So thank you very much for your support and the help. And thank you, Dr. Jim Cotton and my colleague. It was an honor to have you here. Very fantastic and inspiring talk today. So if you want to find out more for our work, so McMaster Center for Climate Change, just type on the Google, so you'll be at the page. There are many things going on. Thank you for more info today with us. And thank you very much and good night.